I know everything.
The worst news of your life always comes when you're wearing your rattiest underwear and eating cereal straight from the box. I was standing in my kitchen at 3 in the afternoon, still in my surgical recovery clothes, basically glorified pajamas that made me look like I'd given up on life entirely, which, considering the past month of marital ice age with Claire, wasn't far from the truth. My back surgery had left me moving like a rusty gate, and my wife had been treating me like I was contagious with failure. "Dad?" Sophie's voice cracked as she came through the front door, her backpack sliding off her shoulder and hitting the hardwood with a thud that echoed through our too-quiet house. "Hey, kiddo." I set down my cereal bowl and turned, immediately noticing something was wrong. My 9-year-old daughter had this look, the same expression she'd worn when she'd accidentally broken Claire's favorite vase last year. Guilt mixed with fear, seasoned with the kind of adult worry no kid should carry. "Promise you won't be sad," she said, which was exactly the kind of thing that guaranteed I was about to be devastated. "Sophie, what's going on?" She reached into her backpack and pulled out a folded piece of paper, handling it like it might explode. "My friend Emma's mom works at the hospital. She's a nurse in the lab." Sophie's voice got smaller with each word. "She saw Mommy there yesterday. She said to give this to you and not tell Mommy anything." Allergies. The paper felt heavier than it should have as I unfolded it. Medical letterhead, lab results, Claire's name at the top. Then I read the rest, and my world tilted sideways. Multiple health-related infections, chlamydia, gonorrhea, HPV. The dates showed she'd been tested 3 times in the past 6 months. 3 times. While I'd been recovering from surgery, thinking my wife was just stressed about my health, she'd been putting herself at serious medical risk, like some kind of twisted hobby. "Dad, are you okay?" Relinqua kept at my daughter, really looked at her. Sophie had Claire's dark hair, but my stubborn chin. And right now, she was staring at me with the kind of concern that made my chest tight. This kid had somehow ended up in the middle of whatever nightmare my marriage had become, and she was trying to protect me. "Pack a bag, sweetheart, just for a few days. Are we going to Grandma and Grandpa's?" "Yeah, we need to visit them for a while." Sophie nodded like she'd been expecting this. Maybe she had. Kids see things adults miss. Or maybe adults just get really good at lying to themselves. I went upstairs and threw some clothes in a duffel bag, my hands shaking slightly as I tried to process what I'd just learned. Claire wasn't just distant. She was living a completely different life. The wellness spa she ran downtown wasn't just about aromatherapy and overpriced face masks. The late nights, the mysterious phone calls, the way she'd recoil when I tried to touch her. It all made horrible sense now. I left a note on the kitchen counter. "Took Sophie to my parents. We need to talk. Soon." Then I grabbed my daughter and walked out of the house I'd been paying for, while my wife turned it into a launching pad for her secret life. "Dad?" Sophie asked as we drove toward my parents' place across town. "Is this because of what Mommy does at work?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. "What do you mean, kiddo?" "Emmek's mom says lots of ladies go to Mommy's spa, but they don't look like they want massages. They look scared and sad." I pulled over and parked the truck, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. My 9-year-old daughter had been watching my wife run some kind of operation that involved scared women and secret hospital visits, and I'd been lying in bed complaining about my back pain like an idiot. "Sophie, listen to me very carefully. You did exactly the right thing bringing me that paper, and you're never going to be in trouble for telling me the truth, okay? No matter what." She nodded, and I could see the relief in her eyes. Whatever she'd been carrying around, she didn't have to carry it alone anymore. "Are you and Mommy getting divorced?" The question was matter of fact, delivered with the brutal honesty only kids can manage. I wanted to lie, to protect her, to pretend everything would work out fine. But Sophie had already been protecting me, and she deserved better than pretty lies. "I don't know yet, but whatever happens, you and I are going to be fine. I promise." My parents' house sat on Maple Street in the older part of town, a small colonial with blue shutters and a front porch that had seen better decades. Mom was in her garden when we pulled up, wearing her ridiculous sun hat and talking to her tomatoes like they were old friends. "Eli! Sophie!" She straightened up, immediately sensing something was wrong. "What's going on?" "We need to stay here for a few days, Mom. Claire and I are having some problems," appeared from the garage, wiping his hands on a rag. At 72, he was still built like the construction worker he'd been for 40 years, and he had the kind of BS detector that came from dealing with contractors and politicians his entire life. "How bad?" he asked. I handed him the lab report. Dad read it twice, his expression getting darker each time. Then he folded it carefully and handed it back to me. "Sophie, honey, why don't you go help Grandma with the tomatoes? Your dad and I need to talk." Once Sophie was out of earshot, Dad's voice dropped to the tone he'd used when I was 16 and had wrapped his truck around a tree. "You know what this means, right? That my wife is cheating on me with half the town? It means she's been cheating on you. Means she's been exposing you and potentially Sophie to God knows what. It means she's been lying to your face for months, and it means you need to be very, very careful about what you do next." Xing sank into one of Mom's porch chairs, suddenly feeling every one of my 40 years plus interest. I don't even know where to start. You start by documenting everything. You start by protecting Sophie. And you start by figuring out exactly what your wife has been doing in that spa of hers. Dad sat down across from me, his weathered hands clasped together. "Son, I've seen a lot of marriages fall apart over the years. But this isn't just about cheating. This is about someone who's been living a double life while you were laid up and vulnerable. That's not just betrayal, that's predatory." The word hit me like a slap. Predatory. While I'd been recovering from surgery, dependent on her for basic care, Claire had been out collecting infections and apparently running some kind of business that scared women. She'd used my vulnerability as cover for whatever the heck she was really doing. "What do I do, Dad?" "You get smart. You get evidence. And then you make sure she never gets the chance to hurt you or Sophie again." That night, lying on my parents' lumpy guest room couch, I stared at the ceiling and tried to piece together the last 6 months of my marriage. The late nights Claire explained away as inventory and client consultations. The new clothes, the sudden interest in fitness, the way she'd started locking her phone, the friends I'd never met, the conversations that stopped when I walked into a room. I'd thought she was pulling away because she was stressed about my health, about money, about the normal stuff that puts pressure on a marriage. Turns out she was pulling away because she was building an entirely different life, and I was just the convenient husband who paid the mortgage while she played house with whoever was buying her services. The lab report sat on the nightstand next to me, a piece of paper that had blown up everything I thought I knew about my life. But as I lay there in the dark, listening to my daughter sleep peacefully in my old childhood bedroom, I realized something. I wasn't just hurt. I wasn't just angry. I was ready to go to war. The next morning, I woke up with a plan and a headache. The plan was simple. Find out exactly what Claire was doing and who she was doing it with. The headache was courtesy of my parents' couch, which apparently hadn't been updated since the Carter administration. "You look like heck," Mom said, handing me a cup of coffee that could strip paint. "Feel worse, but I'll live." Sophie was already at the kitchen table, working on homework and pretending not to listen to every word. Kids are like that. They absorb everything while appearing completely focused on long division. "Dad, can I go to school today?" "Discharged." "Of course. Grandpa's going to drive you and I'll pick you up." "Are you going to see Mommy?" Nelson. Sexism. Was casual, but I could hear the worry underneath it. Sophie was trying to figure out if her world was about to explode completely, and I couldn't blame her. "Not today. Today I'm going to take care of some business." After Sophie left for school, I sat in my truck outside Claire's wellness spa and tried to remember when I'd stopped paying attention to my own life. The building was a converted Victorian house on Main Street, painted pale yellow, with a discreet sign that read, "Serenity Wellness Center, massage, aromatherapy, holistic health." It looked innocent enough, the kind of place where suburban women went to get their chakras aligned and complain about their husbands. But now I was seeing it differently. The parking lot was mostly empty at 10 in the morning, But there were two cars I didn't recognize. Expensive ones. A BMW and the Mercedes, both with medical license plates. I pulled out my phone and called Frank Delaney, a guy I'd known since high school who'd become a private investigator after washing out of the police force. Frank had the kind of drinking problem that made him unreliable for law enforcement, but perfect for digging up dirt on cheating spouses. Eli Granger. Jesus, I haven't heard from you in years. How's married life? Shortest. That's actually why I'm calling. I need your help with something, and I need it to stay quiet. Cheating wife? Shameful. Worse. Can you meet me at the Broken Anchor in an hour? The Broken Anchor was the kind of dive bar that opened at 11 and attracted the sort of customers who needed a drink before lunch. Frank was already there when I arrived, nursing a beer and looking like he'd slept in his car, which, knowing Frank, he probably had. So what's the story? He asked, after I'd ordered a coffee and settled into the booth across from him. I handed him the lab report and watched his expression change as he read it. Holy crap, Eli. This is bad. Persists. It gets worse. My daughter says scared women go to my wife's spa, and I'm pretty sure it's not for the ambiance. Franklin leaned back in his seat, already thinking like an investigator. What do you want to know? Everything. Who she's seeing, what she's really doing at that spa, where the money's going. I want to know what my wife's been doing while I was laid up like an invalid. This is going to cost you. I don't care. I want documentation, photos, recordings, whatever you can get legally. I want enough evidence to bury her in divorce court. Frank nodded and finished his beer. Give me a week. And Eli, be careful. If your wife is running the kind of operation I think she's running, she's got connections you don't want to mess with. Unborn, I decided to do some investigating of my own. I drove to the spa and walked in like a regular customer, putting on my best confused husband act. The front desk was staffed by a young woman with tired eyes and the kind of fake smile that came with a paycheck. Her name tag said Tina. Hi there. Are you here for an appointment? Actually, I was hoping to surprise my wife. She works here. Claire Granger? Tina's smile flickered for just a second, but it was enough. Oh, you're Mr. Granger. Claire's mentioned you. She's with a client right now, but I could see if she's available later. I was actually wondering about booking an appointment for myself. My back's been ending me since my surgery. Of course. We offer several therapeutic massage options. There's the standard relaxation package, or if you're looking for something more comprehensive, we have some specialized treatments. The way she said comprehensive made my skin crawl. What kind of specialized treatments? Well, we have off-site services for clients who prefer more privacy. Hotel appointments, house calls, that sort of thing. Very discreet. I nodded like this was perfectly normal information. Sounds expensive. The rates vary depending on the specific services requested. Claire would be the best person to discuss pricing with you. I thanked Tina and left, my head spinning. Off-site services. Hotel appointments. Discreet. My wife wasn't just cheating. She was running an escort service out of her wellness spa, and I'd been too stupid and trusting to see it. That evening, I picked Sophie up from school and tried to act normal while my world continued to collapse around me. She chattered about her day, her friends, her upcoming science project, and I found myself memorizing every word. Whatever happened next, I wanted to remember this. My daughter being a kid, innocent and happy, before everything got complicated. Dad, are you listening? Sorry, kiddo, what were you saying about the volcano? I said Emma's mom wants to know if you're okay. She feels bad about giving me that paper. I pulled into my parents' driveway and turned to look at Sophie. Tell Emma's mom that she did the right thing. Sometimes adults need help seeing the truth, and she helped me see something I needed to know. Are you going to confront Mommy? The question was so mature, so much more, sometimes that she never just in personally. Are you was so mature, so far beyond what a 9-year-old should have to think about, that I felt my chest tighten with anger. Not at Sophie, but at Claire for putting us in this situation. For making our daughter worry about adult problems and use words like confront. Eventually, but first, I need to understand exactly what's been going on. That night, after Sophie was asleep, I thought literally touch about it. I find them of the 2000 shines. I sat on the porch with Dad and told him what I'd learned at the spa. Jesus Christ, Eli. Yeah. You know what this means for custody, right? If she's involved in escort activity out of that place, if she's exposing Sophie to that environment, that's why I need to be smart about this. I need evidence, not just suspicions. Dad was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the street where I'd grown up, where I'd learned to ride a bike and throw a baseball, and trust that the adults in my life would protect me from the ugly parts of the world. Son, I'm going to say something, and I want you to listen carefully. Your wife didn't just cheat on you. She didn't just expose you to diseases. She built a criminal enterprise while you were vulnerable, and she used your home, Sophie's home, as a base of operations. That's not a marriage problem. That's a predator problem. He hit me again, harder this time. Predator. Someone who used my trust, my love, my physical vulnerability as cover for activities that could destroy our family and traumatize our daughter. I thought about all the nights I'd lain in bed after surgery, grateful that Claire was working so hard to keep the business afloat while I recovered. All the times I'd felt guilty for not being able to help more, for being a burden, for not being the husband she deserved. Turns out, I was never the problem. I was just the convenient cover story. My phone buzzed with a text from Claire. "Where are you? Sophie has school tomorrow." I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "Sophie's fine. We'll talk soon." "Eli, what's going on? Come home." "Can't do that right now. This is ridiculous. Whatever you think is happening, we can work it out." I almost laughed. Work it out. Like this was a disagreement about household chores or vacation plans. Not the complete destruction of everything I thought was real about my life. "Claire, I know about the lab results. I know about the spa. We'll talk when I'm ready." My phone rang immediately, but I turned it off. I wasn't ready to hear her voice. Wasn't ready for whatever lies or manipulation she'd try to use to explain away the unexplainable. Tomorrow, Frank would start his investigation. Tomorrow, I'd begin the process of documenting the end of my marriage and the beginning of whatever came next. Tonight, I just sat on my parents' porch and tried to figure out how I'd been so blind for so long. Frank called me 3 days later with news that made my stomach drop into my boots. "Meet me at the diner on Route 9. And Eli, bring your checkbook. You're going to want to pay me in cash for this." The diner was one of the 1970s, complete with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that could wake the dead. Frank was already there when I arrived, looking like he'd aged 5 years in 3 days. "Jesus, Frank, you look terrible." "This is bad, Eli. Worse than we thought." He slid a manila envelope across the table. "Photos, recordings, financial records. Your wife isn't just running an escort service. She's running a high-end operation with some very connected clients." I opened the envelope and immediately wished I hadn't. Photos of Claire entering and leaving hotels with men I recognized. Dr. Mark Halprin, who'd done my wife's nose job 2 years ago. City Councilman Robert Hayes, the owner of the biggest car dealership in town. "How long has this been going on?" "Best I can tell, at least 2 years, maybe longer. She's been very careful, very professional, but she got sloppy when you were laid up. Started taking more risks, seeing clients during the day, using the spa as a meeting point. There were bank records showing deposits that didn't match the spa's legitimate income. Hotel receipts. Phone records showing calls to numbers that traced back to wealthy married men throughout the county." "There's more," Frank said, lighting a cigarette despite the no-smoking signs. "She's not working alone. That girl at the front desk, Tina, she's been keeping records. Names, dates, services provided, everything." "Why would she do that?" "Insurance, probably. Or maybe she's planning her own exit strategy. Either way, she's got enough documentation to bring down half the town council." I stared at the photos, trying to reconcile the woman in them with the person I'd been married to for 12 years. This Claire looked confident, predatory, completely in control. Nothing like the stressed, distant wife who'd been avoiding me for months. What about Sophie? Has she been exposed to any of this? Not directly. But Eli, your daughter's been covering for your wife, lying to teachers about why Claire missed school events, making excuses when people asked questions. She's been protecting a secret she doesn't even understand. The rage that had been building in my chest for days finally found its target. Claire hadn't just betrayed me. She'd turned our daughter into an accomplice, made her lie to protect activities that could destroy our family. I want to confront her, today. Bad idea. You confront her now, she'll destroy evidence, disappear. Maybe even try to flip the script and claim you're the problem. You need to be smarter than that. Frank stubbed out his cigarette and leaned forward. Here's what you do. You document everything. You file for divorce with a lawyer who specializes in high-conflict cases, and you make sure you have custody of Sophie locked down before Claire knows what hit her. That could take weeks. Good. Use the time. Let her think everything's normal while you build your case. And Eli? Stay away from her clients. These aren't random cheaters. These are powerful men with a lot to lose. They'll do whatever it takes to keep this quiet. I drove home, to my parents' house, which was starting to feel more like home than the place I'd shared with Claire, and found Sophie doing homework at the kitchen table. She looked up when I walked in, and I could see the question in her eyes. How was school, kiddo? Fine. Mrs. Patterson asked where you've been. I told her you were helping Grandpa with a project. Imprisonment. Another lie. Another cover story from a 9-year-old who was getting too good at protecting adults from consequences they'd earned. Sophie, I need you to know something. You don't have to lie for me or for Mommy or for anyone. If people ask questions, you can tell them the truth, that your parents are having problems and you're staying with your grandparents for a while. Will that get Mommy in trouble? Mommy's already in trouble. That's not your fault, and it's not your job to fix it. That evening, after Sophie was in bed, I sat down with my parents and laid out everything Frank had discovered. Mom cried. Dad got quiet in the way that meant he was planning something. What do you want to do? He asked finally. I want to destroy her. I want to make sure everyone in this town knows exactly what she's been doing. I want her clients to lose their wives, their jobs, their reputations. I want her to pay for what she's done to Sophie, to me, to all of us. That's the anger talking, Mom said gently. What does your head say? I thought about it. Maybe we need to read with myself. I thought about it. What did my head say? My head says I need to protect Sophie first. Make sure Claire can't use her as a bargaining chip or turn her against me. Then, I need to make sure Claire faces consequences for what she's done. Legal consequences? Manslaughter. All kinds of consequences. Legal, financial, social. I want her to understand that actions have results, and her results are going to be very, very unpleasant. Dad nodded approvingly. Now you're thinking like a contractor. You plan the job, you gather your materials, and then you execute perfectly. What's the first step? You call that lawyer Frank recommended. You file for emergency custody based on the STD exposure and the criminal activity. You get Sophie protected legally before you do anything else. And then? Dad's smile was grim. Then you start building the case that's going to end your wife's little business permanently. My phone buzzed with another text from Claire. This is getting ridiculous, Eli. Come home so we can talk like adults. I showed the message to my parents. What should I say? I asked. Nothing, Dad replied. Let her wonder. Let her worry. Let her start making the kind of mistakes that desperate people make. I turned off my phone and went to check on Sophie. She was asleep, curled up under the quilt Mom had made when I was Sophie's age. In the dim light from the hallway, she looked so young, so innocent, so completely unaware that her world was about to change forever. I made a promise to her sleeping form. Whatever happened next, whatever I had to do to Claire and her clients and anyone else who'd participated in this betrayal, Sophie would be protected. She'd be safe, and she'd never have to lie for adults again. Tomorrow, I'd start the process of dismantling my wife's secret life piece by piece. Tonight, I just stood in the doorway and watched my daughter sleep, memorizing this moment before everything changed forever. The lawyer Frank recommended was a woman named Patricia Wells, who specialized in what she called high-conflict domestic situations. Her office was downtown, 3 blocks from Claire's spa, and her handshake felt like she could crush walnuts. Mr. Granger, I've reviewed the materials you provided. This is going to be ugly. How ugly? Your wife has been operating an illegal escort operation while you've been the unknowing financial backer. She's exposed you and potentially your daughter to multiple health risks. She's used your joint assets to fund illegal activities. In terms of divorce proceedings, you hold all the cards. Patricia spread the photos and bank records across her desk like she was dealing a winning poker hand. However, she continued, the men involved have significant resources and connections. They're going to fight hard to keep this quiet, which means they're going to try to discredit you, intimidate you, maybe even frame you for something. What do you recommend? We file for emergency custody today, based on the health risks to Sophie. We freeze all joint accounts. We get a restraining order requiring Claire to stay away from you and your daughter until this is resolved. Then, we wait for her to make mistakes. What kind of mistakes? Desperate people do desperate things. She's going to try to contact you, threaten you, maybe even try to destroy evidence. Every contact, every threat, every attempt to interfere with the custody order just makes our case stronger. I signed the papers that afternoon. Emergency custody petition, asset freeze, restraining order. By 5 o'clock, Claire would be legally prohibited from coming within 500 feet of Sophie or me, and all our joint accounts would be locked down. How long before she knows? I asked. She'll be served within the hour. After that, the clock starts ticking. I drove to the elementary school to pick up Sophie, my hands shaking slightly as I realized there was no going back now. Whatever happened next, my marriage was officially over, and my daughter's life was about to get very complicated. Sophie was quiet on the drive to my parents' house, staring out the window with the kind of thoughtful expression that meant she was processing something important. Dad, are you and Mommy getting divorced now? Childbirth. Yes, sweetheart, we are. Is it because of what she does at work? Hit me like a punch to the chest. Sophie knew. Maybe not the details, but she understood that Claire's work was the problem. Partly. Mommy made some choices that hurt our family, and now we have to make different choices to keep you safe. Am I going to live with you or with her? With me, at least for now. Sophie nodded like this was the answer she'd been expecting. Good. I like staying with Grandma and Grandpa, and Mommy's been scary lately. Scary. My 9-year-old daughter had been living with someone she found scary, and I'd been too focused on my own recovery to notice. What do you mean, scary? She gets really angry when people ask questions, and she talks on the phone a lot using her mean voice, and sometimes strange men come to the house when you're sleeping. I pulled over and parked the truck, my heart pounding. Strange men came to our house? Not inside. They just talked to Mommy on the porch. But they made her nervous. And when Mommy gets nervous, she gets mean. I thought about Frank's warning about Claire's clients being powerful men with a lot to lose. Men who might pressure her to keep quiet. Who might threaten her if she became a liability. Sophie, if anyone ever comes to Grandma and Grandpa's house looking for you or me, you don't answer the door. You find an adult immediately, okay? Okay. Dad, are the strange men bad guys? I don't know yet, but we're going to be very careful until I figure it out. My phone rang as we pulled into my parents' driveway. Claire's number. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to the message. Eli, what the heck is this? Restraining order? Emergency custody? Have you lost your mind? Call me back right now so we can fix this before it gets out of hand. Her voice was tight with panic, which meant she'd been served and was starting to understand the scope of what she was facing. Good. Let her panic. Panicked people make mistakes. The phone rang again. This time I answered. Claire, what the heck do you think you're doing? You can't just take Sophie and disappear. You can't freeze our accounts. This is insane. I have a court order that says I can do exactly that. Based on what? Some BS medical report? You don't understand what you're dealing with here, Eli. Then explain it to me. Explain the STDs. Explain the hotel receipts. Explain why our daughter says strange men have been coming to our house. Silent. Then, we need to meet, face to face. There are things you don't understand. We can't meet. There's a restraining order. Then have your lawyer call mine. But Eli, you need to be very careful here. You're messing with people who don't like to be messed with. The threat was subtle but clear. Back off, or face consequences from her powerful clients. Is that a threat, Claire? It's a warning from someone who still cares about you. If you still cared about me, you wouldn't have been sleeping with half the town while I was recovering from surgery. I hung up and immediately called Patricia Wells. She just threatened me, I told her. Implied that her clients might retaliate if I don't back off. Perfect. Did you record the call? No. But I can get the call everything. No, but I can get the call of community. I think that they called good quick, unless no, but I can get her to make the threat again. Do it. And Mr. Granger, be very careful. She's right about one thing. You are dealing with powerful people who have a lot to lose. That night, Sophie helped Mom make dinner while Dad and I sat on the porch and planned my next moves. The evening was warm, the kind of late spring weather that usually made me optimistic about the future. Tonight, it just felt like the calm before a very ugly storm. She's going to escalate, Dad said. When people like your wife feel cornered, they don't surrender. They attack. Let her attack. I've got documentation, legal protection, and custody of Sophie. What can she do? She can try to destroy your reputation. She can claim you are toxic, that you knew about her activities, that you're an unfit father. She can make your life heck while her lawyer tries to find holes in your case. Then I'll make her life heck right back. Dad looked at me with the expression he'd worn when I was 16 and thought I knew everything. Son, this isn't about making her life heck. This is about protecting Sophie and ending this cleanly. Don't let your anger turn you into something you'll regret. As I sat there listening to my daughter laugh with her grandmother, thinking about all the lies Claire had told and all the risks she'd exposed us to, I realized my anger wasn't something I wanted to control. It was something I wanted to use. Claire's first mistake was showing up at Sophie's school. I got the call from the principal at 2 in the afternoon. Mr. Granger, your wife is here demanding to see Sophie. She's quite agitated, and frankly, she's making the office staff uncomfortable. There's a restraining order. She's not supposed to be within 500 feet of Sophie. We're aware. We've asked her to leave, but she's refusing. She says the restraining order is invalid and that you've kidnapped her daughter. I was at the school in 10 minutes, arriving just as a police cruiser pulled into the parking lot. Through the office windows, I could see Claire pacing back and forth, gesturing wildly as she spoke to the principal. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Officer Martinez was someone I'd known since high school, a decent guy who'd always been fair in his dealings with people. He nodded when he saw me approaching. Eli, heard you were having some domestic troubles. She's violating a restraining order. I know. We'll handle it. But I have to ask, is there any truth to what she's saying about you kidnapping your daughter? Sophie's with me under an emergency custody order. Claire's been served with all the paperwork. Martinez nodded and walked into the school office. I could hear Claire's voice rising as he explained the legal situation. Could see her face getting red with anger and frustration. This is BS, she shouted, loud enough for half the school to hear. He's my daughter. He can't just take her. Ma'am, you need to calm down, Martinez said firmly. You're in violation of a court order, and you're creating a disturbance at a school. You need to leave now. I'm not leaving without my daughter. That's when Sophie appeared in the office doorway, drawn by the commotion. She took one look at her mother, wild-eyed, disheveled, screaming at a police officer, and stepped backward into the hallway. Claire saw her and immediately switched tactics, her voice becoming sweet and pleading. Sophie, baby, come here. Mommy needs to talk to you. Sophie looked at me, then at her mother, then shook her head. I want to stay with Dad. The rejection hit Claire like a physical blow. Her face crumpled for just a moment, before the anger returned, stronger than before. He's been poisoning you against me. Sophie, I'm your mother. You belong with me. Ma'am, that's enough, Martinez said, taking Claire by the arm. You're coming with me. As they led her away, Claire turned back to look at Sophie and me. This isn't over, Eli. You have no idea what you've started. Another threat, this one in front of witnesses. That evening, Patricia Wells called with an update. Your wife spent 4 hours in jail before her lawyer bailed her out. She's now facing charges for violating the restraining order and disturbing the peace. Her lawyer is claiming emotional distress, but the judge wasn't sympathetic. What happens next? We use today's incident to strengthen our custody case. A mother who violates court orders and creates scenes at her daughter's school is not someone the court trusts with unsupervised visitation. And the bigger picture? Things get interesting. My sources tell me that several of your wife's clients have been contacted by investigators. Word is getting out about her activities, and some very important people are starting to panic. Halperin, about Councilman Hayes, about all the powerful men who'd been paying my wife for services while I was laid up and vulnerable. They'd use my situation, my trust, my marriage as cover for their activities. Now they were about to learn that actions have consequences. What kind of panic? The kind where people start making desperate decisions to protect themselves. Be careful, Eli. Desperate people are dangerous people. That night, I sat down with Sophie to talk about what had happened at school. Are you okay, kiddo? Looked really scary today. I know. She's going through a difficult time, and sometimes that makes people act in ways that aren't normal for them. Is she sick? It was such an innocent question, asked with the kind of concern only a child could have for someone who just terrorized her at school. Sophie was worried about her mother, even after everything that had happened. In a way, yes, she's made some choices that have consequences, and now she's having trouble dealing with those consequences. Will she get better? Flames, I wanted to lie, to give Sophie hope that her mother would somehow return to being the person she'd been before all this started. But Claire had been living a double life for years, had been using our family as cover for illegal activities, had exposed us to health risks and criminal liability. There was no getting better from that level of betrayal. I don't know, sweetheart, but I know that you and I are going to be okay, no matter what happens with Mommy. Sophie nodded and went back to her homework, but I could see the sadness in her eyes. Whatever Claire had done, whatever she'd become, she was still Sophie's mother, and Sophie was going to have to live with the knowledge that her mother had chosen her secret life over her family. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You need to back off. This is bigger than you understand. I showed the message to Dad, who read it twice before handing the phone back. One of her clients? Has to be. They're getting proud of the reg. I feel. Let them be nervous. Let them understand that their secret isn't secret anymore. But as I lay in bed that night, listening to the sounds of the house settling around me, I couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to get much worse before they got better. Claire had escalated by violating the restraining order. Her clients were escalating by sending threatening messages. Everyone involved in this mess was starting to panic, and panicked people don't make rational decisions. I thought about Sophie, sleeping peacefully in the next room, trusting that I would protect her from whatever came next. I thought about my parents, who'd opened their home to us without question. I thought about all the innocent people who were going to be hurt when this story finally came out. And I thought about Claire, who'd started this whole nightmare by choosing her secret life over her family. Tomorrow, I was going to start making sure she faced every single consequence of that choice. Frank called me at 6 a.m. with news that changed everything. Eli, you need to see this. Meet me at the diner in 20 minutes and bring your lawyer. Wells wasn't happy about the early morning summons, but she came anyway, looking like she'd dressed in the dark. Frank was already there with a laptop and a stack of papers that made my stomach clench. What is it? Patricia asked without preamble. Tina, the girl from the spa's front desk. She came to me yesterday with everything. Names, dates, financial records, recordings. Your wife's been running a full-service operation with clients throughout the state. Frank opened his laptop and showed us a spreadsheet that looked like a business ledger, because that's exactly what it was. She's got judges, politicians, doctors, business owners, and they've all been paying premium rates for services that go way beyond massage therapy. Why is Tina giving you this? I asked. Because Claire fired her yesterday and threatened to destroy her if she talked. Tina decided she'd rather destroy Claire first. Patricia leaned forward, studying the records. This is a prosecutor's dream. We're talking about organized illicit escort operations, tax evasion, money laundering. Your wife is looking at serious federal charges. What about the clients? That depends on how cooperative they want to be. But Eli, this changes everything. We're not just talking about divorce court anymore. We're talking about criminal court. Pull out a small digital recorder. Tina also gave me this, a conversation between Claire and Dr. Halperin from 2 days ago. He pressed play, and Claire's voice filled the diner booth. Mark, you need to calm down. Eli doesn't know anything specific. He knows enough to file for divorce and freeze the accounts. What if he goes to the police? He won't. He's too concerned about Sophie to create a public scandal. And if you're wrong, then we make sure he has bigger problems to worry about. I know people who can make his life very difficult. I can't be connected to this. My practice, my reputation. Your reputation is exactly why you'll help me handle this. Because if I go down, I'm taking everyone with me. The recording ended, and we sat in silence for a moment. She just threatened to blackmail her own clients, Patricia said finally. And she implied she'd use criminal contacts to intimidate you. What do we do with this? We turn it over to the district attorney. Today. This isn't just about your divorce anymore, Eli. This is about a criminal conspiracy. And you're a victim, not a participant. The district was downtown and the county was downtown in the county courthouse, a building I'd driven past thousands of times without ever imagining I'd need to go inside. DA Rebecca Morrison was a tough woman in her 50s who'd built her career prosecuting organized crime. Mr. Granger, I've reviewed the materials your attorney provided. This is significant. How significant? Your wife is looking at federal charges for operating in the legal escort network, money laundering, and tax evasion. Her clients are looking at solicitation charges at minimum, possibly conspiracy charges, depending on how involved they were in the operation. She spread photos across her desk, the same ones Frank had shown me, but now they looked different. Not like evidence of personal betrayal, but like evidence of criminal activity. What happens to Sophie? Your daughter will be protected. She's a victim in this situation, not a participant. The emergency custody order will almost certainly become permanent, and your wife will likely face restrictions on visitation even after she serves her sentence. Sentence. The word hit me like a physical blow. Claire wasn't just going to lose our marriage, our house, our life together. She was going to prison. How long? If she's convicted on all charges, 10 to 15 years. Possibly more if the federal prosecutors decide to make an example of her. I thought about Sophie, about trying to explain to a 9-year-old that her mother was going to prison for crimes she couldn't even understand. I thought about the life we'd built together, the plans we'd made, the future we'd imagined. All of it gone because Claire had chosen money and excitement over family and honesty. There's something else, DA Morrison continued. We're going to need you to testify about the timeline, about your wife's behavior during your recovery, about any conversations you might have overheard. What about the threats? Those are separate charges. Intimidation of a witness, criminal threatening. Your wife is building quite a case against herself. That afternoon, I picked Sophie up from school and tried to figure out how to explain that her world was about to change in ways I couldn't protect her from. Dad, you look sad. I am sad, kiddo, but not because of anything you did. Is it because of Mommy? Yeah, Mommy's in serious trouble, and that means some difficult things are going to happen. Sophie was quiet for a moment, staring out the window as we drove toward my parents' house. Is she going to jail? The question was asked so matter-of-factly that I almost missed the weight of it. Sophie had been watching, listening, understanding more than any of us had realized. Probably. Yes. For a long time? Yes. Sophie nodded like she'd been expected this answer. Sophie, not about that. Will I have to visit her there? Only if you want to, and not for a while. I don't want to. Is that okay? I pulled over and turned to look at my daughter, this brave, smart, intuitive kid who'd been protecting me from the truth while I was too blind to see it myself. Sophie, you never have to do anything that makes you uncomfortable or scared. Your job is to be a kid, go to school, have fun with your friends. My job is to take care of you and keep you safe. Okay? Okay. Dad, are you going to be okay? The question broke my heart. My 9-year-old daughter was worried about me, trying to take care of me, when she should have been the one being taken care of. I'm going to be fine. We're both going to be fine. It's going to be different, and sometimes it's going to be hard, but we're going to get through this together. That evening, Claire called from a new number. I almost didn't answer, but Patricia had told me to document every contact, every threat, every attempt to interfere with the legal process. Eli, please, we need to talk. We can't talk. There's a restraining order. Then listen. You don't understand what you're doing. These people, my clients, they're not going to just let this happen. They have too much to lose. That sounds like another threat, Claire. A threat, it's reality. You think you're protecting Sophie, but you're putting her in danger. These men have connections, resources. They can make problems disappear. Are you saying they'd hurt Sophie? I'm saying you need to think very carefully about what you're willing to risk to get your revenge. The word hung in the air between us. Revenge. As if protecting my daughter and seeking justice for criminal activity was just petty vindictiveness. This isn't about revenge, Claire. This is about consequences. Same thing. No, it's not. Revenge is what you deserve. Consequences are what you've earned. I hung up and immediately called Patricia to report the conversation. Another threat, another piece of evidence, another nail in the coffin of Claire's defense. But as I sat on my parents' porch that evening, watching Sophie play in the yard while Mom and Dad prepared dinner, I couldn't shake Claire's words. Was I putting Sophie at risk by pursuing this? Were there really people who would hurt a child to protect their secrets? I thought about Dr. Halperin, about Councilman Hayes, about all the powerful men whose lives were about to be destroyed when this story became public. Men with money, connections, influence. Men who might decide that silencing witnesses was preferable to facing consequences. Then I thought about Sophie, about the lies she'd been forced to tell, about the fear in her eyes when she'd handed me that medical report, about the choice between protecting her from powerful men or protecting her from the truth about her mother. I'd made my choice. Now I had to live with the consequences, whatever they might be. Tomorrow, the district attorney would begin building her case. Tomorrow, Claire's secret life would become public record. Tomorrow, a lot of powerful people were going to learn that their secrets weren't as safe as they'd thought. And tomorrow, Sophie and I would wake up in my parents' house, safe and together, ready to face whatever came next. Because that's what families do. They protect each other, they face consequences together, and they survive. Even when the people who should have been family choose something else instead. The phone rang one more time that night, Claire's number again. This time, I didn't answer. I was done listening to threats from someone who'd forfeited the right to be heard. Tomorrow, the reckoning would begin. Epilogue. Justice served. 6 months later, I stood in the courthouse lobby reading the newspaper headline. Local wellness spa owner sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. Claire had pled guilty to running an illegal escort operation, money laundering, and tax evasion. Dr. Halperin had lost his medical license and was facing his own criminal charges. Councilman Hayes had resigned in disgrace. 3 other prominent businessmen had been arrested, and the investigation was ongoing. Sophie was with me, holding my hand as we walked down the courthouse steps. She'd grown 3 inches in 6 months and had started playing soccer. She laughed more now, smiled easier, slept through the night without nightmares. Dad, is it over now? The legal part is over. The rest of it, us building our new life, that's just getting started. We'd moved into our own place the month before. a small house near my parents with a big backyard and a swing set. Sophie had her own room, painted purple at her insistence, with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. Do you think Mommy will try to contact us? Maybe, but if she does, we'll handle it together. Sophie nodded and skipped ahead to where my parents were waiting by the car. She was resilient in the way kids are when they're finally safe, finally free from adult secrets and lies. The construction business was doing well. Word had gotten out about what Claire had done, but instead of hurting my reputation, it had somehow enhanced it. People respected that I'd protected my daughter, that I'd done the right thing even when it was difficult. Tina, the former receptionist who'd provided the evidence that brought everything down, had started working for me as an office manager. She was good with numbers, better with people, and completely trustworthy. She'd risked everything to tell the truth, and I made sure she was rewarded for that courage. Frank Delaney had gotten sober and started a legitimate investigation business. Patricia Wells had been elected to the county court. D.A. Morrison had used the case as a springboard to run for state attorney general. Everyone who'd done the right thing had been rewarded. Everyone who'd chosen lies and secrets had faced consequences. That's how justice is supposed to work. That evening, Sophie and I sat on our front porch eating ice cream and watching the sunset. It was the kind of peaceful moment that had seemed impossible 6 months ago, when our world was falling apart and I didn't know who to trust. Dad, are you happy now? It was such a simple question, but how I walked in the sticks made me think. I was divorced. My ex-wife was in prison. My daughter was growing up without her mother. By most measures, my life had been completely destroyed. But Sophie was safe. She was thriving. She didn't have to lie for adults anymore. Didn't have to carry secrets that weren't hers to keep. She could just be a kid. I had a successful business, a supportive family, friends who'd stood by me through the worst of it. I had a future that was uncertain, but honest, complicated, but clean. Yeah, kiddo, I'm happy. Good, me too. She finished her ice cream and went inside to do homework, leaving me alone on the porch with my thoughts. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, and for a moment, my chest tightened with the old fear. But it was just a client asking about a construction estimate. Normal business from normal people living normal lives. I looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky and thought about the choice I'd made 6 months ago. I could have ignored the medical report, pretended not to see the evidence, kept living the lie for Sophie's sake. Instead, I'd chosen truth, consequences, and justice. It had been the hardest thing I'd ever done, and the most important. Because some things are worth fighting for, even when the fight destroys everything you thought you wanted. Family is worth fighting for. Truth is worth fighting for. Justice is worth fighting for. And sometimes, when you fight for the right things in the right way, you discover that what you thought was destruction was actually salvation. Claire had made her choices. Her clients had made theirs. They'd all faced the consequences. Now Sophie and I got to make different choices, build a different life, create a different future, one based on honesty instead of lies, trust instead of betrayal, love instead of manipulation. It was a good trade, the best trade I'd ever made.